because no, that won't. It has to be done by reason and persuasion and logic and truth telling. And that's what philosophers do, you know. And so I think that's quite important, and I will work with any Israeli, any Palestinian, any Muslim, any Christian, any Jew, anywhere in the world who wants a Palestinian state come into being. The ideal, the purpose, the goal is that Palestinian state would be sworn in a non-violence treaty with Israel. It would never become a military threat to Israel, but also vice versa. You know, it would have its own secure borders. It would have a transport link between Gaza and the West Bank. And these people can live in peace. The vast bulk of the Palestinian people, the vast bulk of the Israeli people want that. And so my job, I'm simply like Socrates, a midwife to what is logical. And I've written a 45-page document that outlines all the challenges, the difficulties, what do you do about the right to return, where's the capital, what do you do about the army, you know, all kinds of thorny questions. They're all dealt with in the document. So please read it, you know, share it with your friends, circulate it, email me, I'll send it to you. And if you're properly qualified, I would invite you to sit on that commission. We need intellectuals and peace activists from all the nations. It's not just from Israel and Palestine, because it's a global problem. You know, every Muslim in the world, every Jew and every Christian should want this. This is a theological problem. If we're going to get right with God as one planet, living in harmony, we have to sort this problem. We can't solve the problems of the world, you know, and man's relationship with the divine till we solve this. It's an embarrassment. If you are visiting from another solar system and you're coming on a tourist guide trip to planet Earth, you know, it'd be very embarrassing, actually. That's why they're not manifesting, because they want us to get our act together and make peace. I can guarantee that, you know, then we can welcome the tourists back, you know, from both the other solar systems, but also back to the Middle East itself. My game plan, as I mentioned in the document, is to open the Golden Gate in the eastern wall of the old city of Jerusalem and have a sort of peace tent on the Dome of the Rock, up there on Temple Mount, as a pilgrim place for all peace pilgrims on earth. I believe this is the only way forward. And I welcome your help and support with it. Right. Okay, now I want to move on. Gosh, Brexit. This is my little Brexit update. What a nightmare. I mean, the whole thing is absurd. And we've seen this last week, we've seen this ridiculous health secretary, Hancock, exposed for what he is, a charlatan, a chancer, a deceitful man, a wife cheater. You know, I mean, to me that's typical of the Tory sleaze and lack of ethics. That video of him having a grope with another man's wife. They both of them got 3 kids in their own respective families. And this is what they're doing on the property of government property in work time, breaking all the rules about social distancing. I mean, it's like putting 2 fingers up to the entire British nation and to the world. It's like, well, we won. We're the Brexiteers. We're ruling the roost. I mean, shocking behaviour, absolutely dishonourable and disgraceful. And thank God the man has resigned. I mean, reluctantly and a bit late, and that dreadful woman has gone too. But you see, the trouble is that making that space for that sort of behaviour to go on is down to Boris Johnson. He himself is a master of this deception. And it's not just about sexual infidelity. I mean, that is, I think, a wrong thing. But it's about the feeling that's okay and to be a government minister. I mean, I think the more power you have in society, the more finessed your ethics should be, and the more, you know, responsible you should behave. What I find so appalling is that it's a little window of how these people feel about their duties, which is just power, lust, greed, whatever we can get away with. I mean, they're both very wealthy people. That woman is a millionaire. These are Tory millionaires acting dancing on our graves, and the millions of people that are dying around the world of COVID, they don't care. They've mishandled the whole thing in a deplorable way, and that man should have been health secretary, and she an advisor. It's like putting the devil in charge of heaven. I mean, good Lord. So anyway, thank God he's gone. But it symbolises the lies that have taken root at the heart of the British establishment. I do blame the Queen. I do blame the Privy Council. They could have stopped this. They could have stopped this on day one when Theresa May started to implement her extreme Brexit. They could have pointed out, the Queen should have pointed out, no, there wasn't a mandate for that. Scotland did not vote for it. Northern Ireland did not vote for it. Do not do this, Theresa. I don't know what happened. The Queen must have been drugged or something with some sort of, I don't know what, maybe it's all about fear. Maybe the Queen is just so terrified that she daren't stand up. I think she was in uncharted constitutional waters and therefore very badly advised. But I think the motivation was fear. She was afraid to stand up to the Tory party. Well, hey, this is what you get. You get wicked, evil, ignorant and lying people scurry into places of power. I don't see a single Conservative in the entire House of Commons that I can respect, not in the entire cabinet. They've all been hounded out of what used to be a Tory party with some integrity. No longer. It has become a party of knaves, fools and liars. And we caught a glimpse of it with this man Hancock. He should not only resign as cabinet minister, he should resign his seat in Parliament. He should go from Parliament utterly and totally. So there we are, a little glimpse of what they're up to. Shocking. And, it's finally the British people are beginning to wake up. That's why they all voted en masse for the Liberal Democrats, who are, compared to the Tories, a party of integrity and, genuine intellectual brilliance. When you think of Layla Moran, she's worth 100 of these scandalous Tory buffoons. And she also happens to be Palestinian, bless her, and a highly intelligent woman. I hope she becomes Prime Minister, in the near future. I also want to talk, and let me, by the way, I want to quote something here, because as an intellectual, I found this quote the other day. This book of Jewish quotations was given to me by a Freemason in Dunoon, who happened to be Jewish. We spent a wonderful day chatting. I went into the Freemasonic Lodge at Dunoon, where I used to live in Argyll. And he said, Thomas, you have to have this book, and I honour him for that, so thanks. This is a quote from Maimonides, one of the greatest intellectuals of history. He happened to be Jewish, an Aristotelian, from Cordoba, ended up in Egypt, and is buried in Tiberias on the Dead Sea coast. He said the following in his famous book, Guide to the Perplexed, which is what we need now. E.F. Schumacher wrote another book, Small is Beautiful, that sort of Guide to the Perplexed Volume 2, but we need a new one, I think. Anyway, this is what Maimonides said. He said, a truth established by proof does not gain in force from the support of scholars, nor does it lose its certainty because of popular dissent. Now, just think about this. I love Maimonides, and I love all genuine intellectuals. He's saying, look, once you establish a truth by proof, and we can discuss what is philosophical proof, but it's sort of logic, it's working out whether this is a factual statement or not, and that's what we philosophers study, and Aristotle invented logic to try and develop ways of working out the truth or not of a statement. Well, once it's been established by proof, it doesn't gain in force from the support of other scholars. I mean, if I say something that's true and you understand why I say it and you work it out in your mind, and yes, reason proves to me that's true. Well, I don't care if 100 professors of philosophy sign a petition and say, yes, what Daffern's saying is true, Brexit was a false result and should be leading to a second referendum. That'd be nice, but the truth of the statement isn't augmented by that. And nor does it lose its certainty because of popular dissent. So if I receive 100 death threats, emails, attacks on me on social media and so on, it doesn't mean that I'm not telling the truth, if what I say is provable. So this is really, really important. It's something that Gandhi said also in a slightly different way. He said that a truth supported by a minority is still a truth, even if a majority votes against it. And you have to have the courage to go with that truth. So the question is, of course, is there such a thing as truth in politics? Many people say no, it's different. It's not like science or medicine or mathematics where there are truths and they can be proved. Well, I disagree. I'm with Hobbes, you see. Hobbes is one of my heroes. He tried to found a discipline of political science. And he went to meet Galileo. He was the secretary of Sir Francis Bacon, one of my intellectual heroes. And he said, no, we have to have a way of establishing truth in politics. And he wrote some fantastic books. Read Hobbes in depth. Deceit is one of his masterpieces. And he said, well, what is it that politics studies? Well, it's power. That's the kind of thing like physics studies energy, gravity, these unseen forces, and tries to measure them. Well, politics studies power. It's the same thing. That's what flows through a given system. And how that power is controlled, used, utilised, harnessed, varies. In a democracy, a monarchy, a republic, or whatever, or an anarchistic situation. And I, like Hobbes, I believe that, yes, in politics and in the exercise and duty of utilising power properly and responsibly, you can study it mathematically. And that political science has certain axiomatic principles at its foundation. I think Aristotle was right when he said that the point of politics is to maximise the happiness of the maximum number of people. The whole point of political ethics is to find the route to happiness for the vast majority of people. And that's whether it's a monarchical system, a democratic or republican, or even an anarchistic sort of heaven-ruled type political system. So, I think it's time we realise that politics isn't simply arbitrary, that the duty of veracity is a duty upon politicians. That's why I've called for it to be written into legislation. Truth-telling, integrity, has to be in a functioning political system. I don't care whether it's a monarchy, a democracy, aristocracy, or a republic, or whatever, or an anarchistic or green kind of thing. If you don't have truth in the recognition of the axiomatic principles, then the thing will fall apart. And that's what we've been seeing, because these Tories have failed to read their Hobbes. They've failed to read their fundamental principles, their Aristotle. They've failed to read their political science. I mean, for all Boris Johnson's so-called education, the man is an ill-educated buffoon, hasn't got a clue, thinks that immorality is appropriate behaviour from his cronies and himself. So, yeah, thank you, Maimonides, for reminding us. And then I come on to my next topic, which is that of Scottish independence. One of the people I've interviewed for the summer solstice is a Scottish independence campaigner who's a great fan of Robert the Bruce. You can listen to the interview. I mean, I'm a great fan of Scottish culture, and having lived there for 7 years, having studied in depth Scottish history, having been reluctant to say that Scottish independence was a wise move, because I had this romantic attachment to the idea of Great Britain and we can all muddle together and do good things in the world, I realised that no, the Windsor state has lost its way. irredeemably, that the corruption of the House of Lords and its placement, the corruption of the Westminster system is beyond repair in its current format. And therefore, Scottish independence is axiomatically the next logical move to redeem the entire politics of the islands, of British and Irish islands off the coast of Europe. I say it with great reluctance because, I'm a great lover of British history, but now, my real duty is to the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven. I'm a citizen of that first and foremost. And I take my duties to that divine kingdom as my first duty, not to this or that state. And I now realise, reluctantly, that the Scottish course of independence is the most ethical path for them to follow. And I have supported it by establishing a group of intellectuals for free Scotland, and I will continue to make the case, in amongst people who are prepared to think these things through. One of the things that annoys me most about the English Tories and the way they run the education system in Britain is they're trying to dumb down the intellectual capacity of people. Universities, they're shutting the humanities department, history department. They're trying to turn people into little robots that just do computer stuff and never think. If the Tories could get away with it, they would abolish people and just replace them with robots who can just pay their taxes and fight their wars for them. Drone people. No soul. Well, the Scots aren't like that. The Scots are clever enough to see what's been going on down in Toryland, and they're not going to stand for it anymore. Scottish independence is a done deal. It's just a question of when they call their referendum. And this Hancock nasty nonsense is just yet another nail in the coffin of any trust, any residual trust that the Scots have for the mendacious tyrants who've taken over the running of the British state. It's shocking, absolutely. So listen to my interview with my Scottish independence activist. It's quite moving, actually. Now I want to move on to the next topic, which is what's been going on in Canada. And this grieves me. I'm a Canadian citizen as well as a British and European citizen. I was born in Canada, Montreal. I love Canada. I've lived there happily for 7 years of my life, as long as I've lived in Scotland. And I know Alberta very well. And I've been horrified and shocked to read about what's going on in the discovery of these Indian care homes where they're finding bodies. My friend Sachin Raja, who runs the Wisdom Keepers network, has been active in campaigning. We have several First Native peoples on that, Wisdom Keepers, who are speaking up. I mean, it is shocking, and all I can say, and there was a Truth and Reconciliation Commission set up to investigate this. I don't know what they've been doing. They don't seem to have got all the facts. They keep finding evidence of more graves and so on in these homes. I mean, there's some really important questions and soul searching to be done here. Why do these native Indian care homes have these bodies lying? Are they buried in unmarked graves? Are they buried in just under the ground somewhere? Why? How did they die? Some of them died of illness, like tuberculosis and whatever. Did they all? Were some of them murdered? I mean, these are really important questions that need to be asked, and the Canadian government should be involved. Some of them were Christian institutions, Catholic. What on earth was going on in them? Why were these Christian people running these care homes thinking that these deaths were acceptable, or what was the thinking? All that needs to be examined and investigated. And if someone murdered, God forbid, then the people responsible, these facts should come to light. On behalf of the Canadian Indians, these are truths that must come out. And whether it was the church or churches, or whether it was even the Canadian government that somehow suppressed this information, All that needs to come out. You see, being a philosopher for peace means also I'm a philosopher for truth. Because like Gandhi, I say, where truth is found, satya, then peace is found. And Gandhi said a truth warrior, a satyagrahi, is one grasping after truth. That's how you get peace. 100% with you, Mahatma. That's why I worked for 6 years in London, running the education wing of the Gandhi Foundation, and worked from Kingsley Hall, which is still going. My friend Dave Baker is still there in the flat that Gandhi had when he lived in London in the 1930 peace talks he was doing. Gandhi left a long shadow, and all of us that work in his afterglow have to hold on to that truth. So I'd say to my Canadian friends and compatriots, find out the truth. What happened? Who was responsible? And the government under Trudeau should give every, means, support, resources to find that out. No more suppression of facts. It's a duty of a liberal government to expose this stuff. Liberal meant in Latin free, magnanimous, truth-focused. As a liberal Democrat, I would echo this. That's what the real essence of a true liberal is to find truth. Not neoliberalism, which is a whole other game. And that seems to be the mistake the Australian Prime Minister is doing. The so-called Liberal Party in Australia isn't. It's a right-wing party, apparently. So I'm, very upset about what's going on in Canada. Let's find out the facts. Where I used to live in Scotland, just a little historical footnote, in the Castle of the Muses in Argyll, was round the corner from Inverary Castle. And in the grounds of the Castle of the Muses, which I ran my Peace Institute from for 7 years, Princess Louise, who was the youngest daughter of Queen Victoria, met the son of the Duke of Argyll. And they fell in love and they eventually married, and he was appointed Governor General of Canada by Victoria. And she went off with him on a grand tour of Canada. And that's why Alberta got its name, because her middle name was Alberta, because she was the daughter of Prince Albert. So she was called Louisa Alberta. And that's why Alberta was called after her. And since I love Alberta, I lived there happily for 4 years. I know she'd be utterly shocked and appalled. She was a very good woman, was Alberta Louise, the youngest daughter of Victoria. She was an artist and a sculptress. She lived on right up until 1939, in fact, the youngest daughter of Victoria. She was active in education. She set up a schools trust, and she was a sculptress. She made lots of amazing pieces of art, and yeah, that would be something. I hope the Governor General of Canada actually is involved in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission there and helping find out the facts about this, because it is utterly scandalous. And if the native peoples have been injured in some way, they need recompense, they need, there needs to be some kind of atonement here. So, and I say that as chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for Britain and Ireland. So anyway, bless you, Canadians. Get on with the truth and the fact-finding. Because, as Foucault said, philosophers are also archaeologists. We have to be archaeologists of truth sometimes. And that's what we're trying to do here. Talking of which, I want to also just flag up my continuing commentary on the Quran, which I've absolutely loved doing. I mean, you can tell I'm a scholar that loves scholarship. So, and I don't take on small projects. When I took on 10 years ago, living in the Castle of the Muses in Scotland, the idea of doing a commentary on the Quran, I thought, okay, maybe it'll take 3 years or something. It's taken me 10 years, and I've still got about 6 months left. It's been an epic journey. I don't regret it one bit. I mean, I love scholarship. I love the Quran. I love all the little intricate little nuances in the text. I love uncovering the historicity behind it and uncovering the thought world of 7th century Mecca and Muhammad's own cultural upbringing. And, okay, so am I saying, heretically that this Quran is Muhammad's baby? No, I'm saying that Orthodox Islam says it's all from the Word of God. Well, I'm saying that, yes, okay, it's from the divine intelligence, which is what I call God. But that has to be filtered through the mind of the prophet, or any prophet. All sacred texts, be it the Bible, the Gospels, the teachings of Christ, or Moses, or Buddha, or Mahavira, or the Vedas of India, or the Tower Scriptures, they all come, I think, from the same ultimate place, the divine intelligence. But they're filtered through the mind of the redactor, the prophet. And what happens there is a process of what I call prophetic refraction. Just like a glass, the spoon bends with the light, it's a strange effect. So the original seed thought that comes from the divine intelligence gets refracted by the mind, the culture, the language of the prophet, the seer, who downloads it. And by the time he speaks it, or she speaks it, or it gets written down, it's then coloured by the culture, the language, the thought world of that redactor. And that is true of Muhammad's Quran, absolutely, undoubtedly. There are many, many instances, and I've given that in my commentary. So I'm upholding both, yes, this comes from the divine intelligence, but it's refracted through the cultural, intellectual, social, and religious concerns and issues, and indeed psychological. It comes through Muhammad's own filtration system. And that's why my commentary is absolutely unique. I don't think anyone else in history, forgive me if I'm wrong, please email me, but I don't think anyone in history, any Muslim or non-Muslim, no scholar, has ever attempted this before. This is new. And why? Because I don't think we didn't have the scholarly apparatus before. Not that much was known about other religions, and it wasn't possible to reach a very mature sort of transpersonal history of humanity before. I mean, Hegel could probably have written this commentary, but Hegel never had time. He didn't study the Quran as much detail as I've been able to, and it's a necessary and important work, I think. And I'm trying to give the Quran back to humanity as an amazing resource for our own spiritual growth and maturation. Why should we bother to read the thought world of a 7th century Meccan trader? Well, because he was tapping into extremely important timeless truths, which are archetypal truths beyond history. He was going back to the matrix of the divine intelligence. And I want to just, give a couple of quotes to that effect. I've just finished my commentary on a sequence of surahs called the Hamim sequence. These are called because there's these two letters, Ha, Mim, occur at the front of each of these surahs. And scholars are arguing about why. They don't know. Up to this day, nobody has been able to explain, why they're there. Well, I've attempted to explain it, which is, part of my work. How have I done that? Well, because I believe that these sacred letters are what I call the Kabbalah runes. They're sonic phonograms that convey a certain charge of psychological, spiritual thought. In a sense, they're the condensates of the divine intelligence. And we humans use language to access that divine intelligence. We then convey it through speech, and in all the tongues of mankind, all the sacred tongues especially, Sanskrit, Tibetan, Chinese, Japanese, English, they're all sacred actually, Arabic, Hebrew. And what I've tried to do in my book on the Kabbalah runes is chart how that happens. This is where I part company from Chomsky, who says that, there is a deep grammar, but it can't be accessed. We don't know about it. Well, My dear Chomsky, I admire you as an intellectual, but please read my book, The Cabal of Runes. You'll get it. He's clever enough to get it. And if Wittgenstein was alive, he would get it too. Dear old Wittgenstein was a great influence on me as I started out as a young philosopher at Bristol many years ago and got interested in the philosophy of science. That's why I've come to the position I've come. You can read the preface to my book, The Cabal of Runes. It explains it. And why the runes? Well, because Odin, the god of wisdom of the Norse people and the Anglo-Saxons, my ancestors on some lineages, Odin, the god of wisdom, discovered the runes through suffering. And what are the runes? Well, they're these sonic phonemes that have this magical meaning. They're the condensates of the divine intelligence, if you want. And runic masters know this, and Freya Aswin, one of the great rune teachers of our generation, puts it into her books, and Ralph Bloom and many others, great rune people that I've gone into in detail in the work. And what I'm saying is the Kabbalah, which sees the same in the Hebrew letters, and the runes, which sees it in the Norse letters, go back to a common source in Paleolithic times. Have to. Absolutely, and I prove it in my book. If Sir William Jones was alive, the great linguist who discovered that Sanskrit, Greek, Latin, Persian were all connected, he was an Oxford graduate. If William Jones was alive, he'd read my book and get it in a flash, So it has huge implications, and what I do is I explain the Quran's, these magical letters through that. Ha mean. What does it mean? Read my commentary, listen to it. It's on my Green University website. I explain it. And, I give it away because I want people to get wisdom. And it's my duty as a teacher, a professor. A professor professes publicly what he knows or she knows. Don't hold it back. Don't. No, we have to. It's my duty to tell you and share this stuff with you. So my commentary on the Quran is extremely deep and extremely philosophical. As I say, there's nothing like it. There is this wonderful book, I love it to bits, The Study Quran, edited by my colleague Syed Hussein Nasra, who's a great thinker. It's wonderful, it's got great footnotes and everything. And I love it, It came out after I'd started mine. But it's in no way going into the depth philosophically that I'm going into. It sort of stops at a certain place when I just start going. And when my commentary on the Quran is finally written up, at the moment it's an oral thing, it will be about 20 times the length of this. Sorry about that, to burden future generations, but this is a really important topic, and you have to explain it. Also just come out, which I'm using and I'm really happy for, is this amazing book, The Prophet's Heir, The Life of Ali ibn Abi Talib, by Hassan Abbas, who's a great scholar. He's Professor of International Relations at the National Defense University in Washington, D.C. He's an American expert in international relations. I heard him give the book launch for this at Harvard University's Center for Shia Studies. I love Hassan. He's amazing. He spent 10 years or so writing this book. And it's the first ever proper scholarly biography of Ali in English. And he's written it with all the access to the latest research and discoveries. And he travelled all over the Middle East, meeting scholars, meeting academics, meeting Sufis, meeting saints. And of course, the question of who Ali was is at the core of the Shia-Sunni split in Islam. And Hassan is both a Shia and a Sunni. He's saying, look, we've got to transcend this split. We've got to find the real Ali. Who was he? And we've got to, really stop this civil war between Shias and Sunnis. And I couldn't agree more. That's why I really love what Hassan